Johnny, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
really
man.
appreciate it. I've actually been waiting for the call.
You secretly waiting for the call. Well, listen, I'm really glad you showed up. I feel like I've been waiting on you for a long time. Like the local transportation guy. You're the person who's in charge of the sort of future forecasting for our area, looking at trends and who's moving in, how many people are going to live here, and then hopefully planning decades ahead, right? And making sure that we're not always playing catch up.
That's right. If we're doing our job right, that'll be the outcome. But yeah, I'm totally honored to be here. I listen to the pod and your guest list is like a who's who of change makers in Tampa and Hillsborough. Some people have been out this at this for like decades trying to make a change, make the community a better place to live. And now I'm excited that you invited me on.
Yeah, man, I've had a couple people on the show that have been involved in planning, for decades and decades and
Yeah.
decades. Like Randy Goers showing up here in the late '80s when the state of Florida had to start hiring planners, right? I mean, talking to someone like that with a multi-decade perspective, is really interesting to hear a guy's like that story. And how long have you been at the Hillsborough TPO for?
So I've been out the Hillsborough TPO for about a decade. In my time there, I kind of worked my way up from community planner. After a few years, I started to lead my own team doing data and analysis. I'm really kind of a technical person. And so I led that team for a number of years, took on the transportation improvement program. And just a couple of years ago, my predecessor retired and the board elected me to take her place. So I've been the director for going on 2 years now.
Amazing. And I had a question for you. And it's, answer it however you want, but it always seems like places in cities play catch up, right? You're always on the road with the traffic, and it's like, why didn't they build it with 4 lanes instead of three? And well, why don't we have a light rail system here? And why didn't we do that 20 years ago? And it's like, can you tell me why you think people are perceive or really know that we're always playing catch up? Like, why is that?
I mean, that's a really good question. Why they perceive that we're always playing catch up? I'll say that I don't think that that's the case in every metro across the US or across the world.
So it might be our problem. This might not be just the nature
We
of planning.
we suffer from it in the same way that a lot of Sunbelt cities are suffering from it, with like Rust Belt migration dating back decades. Like looking at looking at this problem from like the early 1900s, who could have guessed that half the US population is going to relocate to Arizona,
Right.
Georgia, Florida, North Carolina? Like transportation projects take a long time to develop and execute. And with the in-migrations we've seen, that just kind of accelerates our timeline and shows that there's a really strong need. But again, yeah, it's not the same way across the entire country. Some might look at it as a benefit because we're really in a good position to understand what the future needs are. And if we're doing our job right, eventually we can play catch up and then start to be more innovative and look at the future problems.
Yeah, and maybe it's not even the perception that we're behind, it's just the simple reality. Like you said, I mean, it's kind of funny looking back, like even over 100 years ago when the Tampa Bay hotel was built, right? And the surrounding area is just this like swampy, mosquito infested area. And, it's beautiful and it's Florida, but at the end of the day, before air conditioning and before some of the modern amenities, it probably wasn't that favorable a place to live year round. So back then, right, who would have thought we'd have
Yeah.
what 23 million people living in Florida? And how many are expected? Isn't it like 30 million in the next decade or
Across the
something?
state, yeah, I can't say. I mean, it's slowed down a little bit recently, but we're still a net recipient of population. And specifically in Hillsborough, we're at like 1.5 right now. I think we're expecting 2 mil or maybe even a little bit more over the next 20 years. That's a lot of growth to plan for. A lot of money needed to build the transportation facilities to accommodate the population growth. But my worry is that just as we're starting to catch up on the backlog, there'll be something new that totally changes the dynamic. Like we could be investing in roads today, and then tomorrow autonomous vehicle takes over, and then we've got to go back and figure out how can we retrofit that.
That's the big conversation I've had on the show with many different guests about light rail, where some of the people that I've had on the show say that, well, first of all, light rail is very expensive, like
Mhm.
in the billions of dollars to accomplish
Yeah.
something real in our region. But then by the time you build it and spend the money, we're all in autonomous vehicles, and then our roadways are really where you'd want the emphasis. So it's like, yeah, technology moves so quick, and how long these projects take. You might plan and build something, but then by the time it's built, you're either still behind or there's a new technology that could have been a lot cheaper and easier to implement.
Yeah, if we could build structures that serve multiple needs, I think that that's one way of future proofing. Before I go off on like a whole separate tangent, I'll say that I'm not a huge believer in autonomous vehicles. I don't think that the technology is at any stage where we can say definitively that it'll be delivered in like 5, 10, 15 years. I don't want to assign anything as precise as that. Autonomous vehicles do feel like a technology that has been just 5 years away for a really long time.
Yeah.
We're closer than we ever have been before, but I don't think it's going to be within our lifetime that 70, 80, 90% of the population is driving an AV, or not
Man,
driving, actually being driven around by an AV.
it's so hard to think about technology today because of the acceleration of AI. I mean, like when we were growing up, there's all these fun movies about artificial intelligence and robots, and even before that, the Terminator, and it's like, but now you're really seeing this acceleration where I think I thought more along the lines of what you're saying, but recently I'm like, wait a second, like, whoa, like in the next few years, maybe we could have some sort of technology that's broadly adopted. Like Tesla
Yeah.
was that sort of first, easy to use system that most people are familiar with, but there could be a competitor that pops up, behind the scenes and accelerates super quick. There's just no way to know.
Yeah. And not necessarily the same application as AVs, but similar logic supports connected vehicles. And those are things that are already out on the road. The technology that's critical for allowing an AV to operate by itself can be translated into vehicles that can like predict if a pedestrian's gonna cross your path, can kind of like tell you how fast you need to approach an intersection so that you either hit the green or don't stop too short. There's a lot of benefit to that technology before we get to the final stage of fully autonomous vehicles.
I think a way it could be implemented that would make a lot of sense is a dedicated autonomous lane. Like as a small example, if you had a single autonomous lane from Tampa to Orlando that
Hmm.
you could go 120 miles an hour on in your autonomous car and no other cars could use it, that kind of beats out a light rail situation. That's a lot less expensive. I mean, the consumer themselves is the one that owns the vehicle. The
Yeah.
government just provides the infrastructure like we've done for the past 100 years. So it's like if a situation like that were to occur, it might be the catalyst to sort of beat out regional light rail projects.
Could possibility.
But we don't know. We don't know. But
No, we don't know.
is that your role though, to sort of predict what technologies will be the norm 5, 10 years down the road to help plan for infrastructure needs?
That's a part of it. I mean, we definitely have to inform decision makers about what are some potential game changers that they should be mindful of as they're figuring out what's the best way to invest public money. We definitely want them to understand all of the different scenarios that could play out. But to take it back and like provide a higher level overview, I view my role as helping the public manage their public goods. And with that as my mission, I try to I try to help the elected officials make decisions that provide the most public good for the most number of people.
Mm.
And so autonomous vehicles, dedicated lane, like yeah, that could make sense, but if the goal is to serve the most number of people and help more people improve their lives, I would really love to see like an HOV lane. Oh, something that has a broader appeal than just folks that drive AVs.
That's a really good point because that technology is probably only going to be available to the most fortunate people, right? With the
Oh
most
yeah.
money to buy some system like that.
At least in the first few years of it, who's to say what's going to happen 100 years from now? But, well, who's to say what's going to happen 100 years from now? Electric vehicles are becoming more cost effective, but I think AV is like a whole different category in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, because you even have gasoline vehicles that are AV. I mean, you have like I think Uber's doing AV, and you've
Yeah.
got these drone. I mean, it's all very up in the air just because of technology's accelerating pace. But it's exciting. It's exciting because we need to figure something else out besides roads and cars. It's like I think the main point in all of this, and we can talk about this right here in a second, this brochure you've brought me, but it seems like the main point in all of this is to just be effective with where the money is spent. And like you said, to serve the most amount of people. And the decision has to be made by the elected officials, but your job is to sort of present facts and help them make the most informed decision they can.
Yeah, it's two part. Like we want to, as professional planners, we want to do the technical analysis to show them quantifiable data to support their decisions, but we also have to show them what the public feels about the options that are presented.
Hmm.
Like technically, if we do an analysis on a roadway, we could come up with a list of improvements that are supported by numbers, but if the public doesn't buy into it, then what's the point?
Right.
Ultimately, we're doing this for the people, right? And if they're not on board, what do we have left?
It seems like there's discrepancies in what people want, though. Like, an example we talk about all the time on the show is some of the people that live out in the more rural or unincorporated areas of the county don't necessarily want to pay for things that the city folks want.
Yeah.
Like, that's always sort of a political challenge and probably always will be, right? Different people that live in different areas who experience different lives have different needs. So balancing that out, I guess that's the job of the politicians, right? That's not what you try to figure out,
Well, I try to facilitate areas of agreement and uh, present balanced information and data to the elected officials. You're right; it is ultimately their decision how we invest public resources, but not everything needs to be political. There doesn't need to be a polemic for every decision. I think we can all agree that health is important. Having access to critical destinations like schools, healthcare, you name it. I think that there's widespread agreement on it. How we actually achieve those aims is a function of what the elected officials see as feasible,
hmm
right? Like when we're presenting them options, they're tasked with a very tough challenge, which is to say, we've got this amount of money. Here's what I think will work for the community. And they want to make decisions that the public supports. And it's not always clear one way or another. There's
hmm
always trade-offs with every decision.
Right. Yeah. There's no perfect answer with anything. But
But
you're trying.
what I will say is like when we're talking about which transportation projects to advance, the cost of these projects to deliver and the time required can lock us into a certain future, right? So like no surprise, Hillsborough County, most of Tampa Bay, most of the state of Florida, folks drive themselves in their own personal vehicle. Now that's fact. To accommodate that mode of travel, we see a need for wider roads, beefed up interstates and things like that. But in a sense, that can lock us into a certain future outcome as well, because it's really hard to retrofit those capital projects to become transit lines. Like once a road is built into the ground, it's really tough to go back and tear it up and lay tracks.
Yeah. So in a sense, we're like manifesting our own destiny where if we lay the facts on the table and say, well, everyone in Florida right now uses a car, or most people do, I should say. And as long as the county keeps entitling all the land and the suburban areas keep expanding, well, it's like, yeah, like that's our destiny. We're going to be a drive to state. But that's sort of discounting some of the culture of urbanism and how many, many, many young people and older generations want to live in a more dense environment where they can get everything they need in their own neighborhood and they don't really
Yeah.
have to be in a car. And I think it would be very short sighted. And I think at the county level, it is a little bit short sighted to not recognize some of that shifting culture. And if we continue down this road of highway expansion and road expansion and put everyone in a vehicle driving everywhere, then what would happen in 30 years when the real demand is to live in the cities and the suburban areas don't have that much of a demand? Then we'd be undoing billions of dollars of work and all this effort we have today. So it's like, I get so frustrated when I see the county just expanding the urban area and bulldozing all the groves and the pastures. And I mean, growing up driving from Tampa to Sarasota, there used to be a ton of areas of open space. And now it just feels like all one metropolitan city. And people complain about the traffic and, well, oh, it's all these damn people moving here. Like, it's really not the people moving here. It's just the fact that we're building suburban areas everywhere. And when you build suburban areas, everyone's just locked in a car,
Yeah.
forced to be in a car to go to Publix everywhere you go, every day. Every errand is in a car. Well, why is there so much traffic? Well, it's because everyone is in a vehicle. I mean, the downtown, the traffic in the urban core of Tampa is not as bad as it is out on like Big Bend Road and 301. And the reason is because in Tampa, people can scooter, one wheel, electric bike, take the trolley, Uber around. You know, there's taxis. You can walk. You can walk. I can go walk right now and get a cup of coffee. You know, I don't have to be in a car. So it's like if the only option at the county level, you know, the elected officials, if they just keep moving towards that direction, we're just going to be in a place that, you know, the people that want to live in the suburban
Mhm.
areas aren't going to appreciate it because they're just stuck in traffic and they don't have any other option. And then the people that live in the city aren't going to appreciate it either because they're not getting the transportation that they want.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. I mean, it's really clear that the needs of folks living in Tampa dramatically different from the folks living Brandon and South and on the fringes of Hillsborough County. Um, what I could say is that to resolve that, I think we need to bring the destinations to the suburban areas. And if the only solution to the housing crisis is to build more suburban developments, well, we need to ensure that there are job opportunities close to those developments. South County being a great example. You talked about Baum. I'm also thinking Lithia, Sun City Center. These are areas of high growth. The the facilities, the services just haven't kept pace with the building. And the way to resolve that is to recruit industry further south, open
Hmm.
up some industrial lands or regional mixed use to get like a little nerdy and give folks opportunity to go work at an office job so that they don't have to hop on 75 North, go to downtown Tampa,
Yeah.
USF, West Shore.
Yeah.
Like if we could figure that out, it would resolve a lot of the traffic problems, but that's a really coordinated effort from the local level, state, even federal government plays a role.
Can you type into Google image Hillsborough County Commission map, David, and pull up the districts of the Hillsborough County Commission? I just want to see who represents what. And then, yeah, you're right. It's almost like what you just explained would probably be the best of both worlds, where the people that live in the city kind of have the amenities they need and the transportation they need. But then if you live in the suburbs, you also have a sort of close by, more urban area where you can work and you can take your kids and have those amenities without having to drive into the city.
Yeah.
Because that's not sustainable. You can't expect in 20 years and 30 years for people that live out in Fishhawk to always come to downtown Tampa for work and for these amenities, right? It's like they need their own thing out there too. Now, we don't expect there to be like 4 hockey arenas around the area and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, you're probably always going to need to come to the city for some of the big city stuff.
Mhm.
Um, is the county right now, and are you guys sort of working on that where you'd have these like urban, what would you even call that? Urban, suburban districts, like suburban downtown?
Yeah, that would have been a better question for Melissa Zornita when you had her on.
Oops. She was great though.
Uh,
We
I
talked for
mean,
a while.
yeah, there's definitely a concerted effort to push developers to set aside land so that those kinds of amenities that you mentioned have the ability to come online later. Like some of the things you mentioned, schools, yeah, of course, we want to set aside right away for development of those. Commercial corridors, topic of discussion. What I'm talking about is more key job centers, so that it's not so that your job opportunities aren't limited to USF West Shore downtown. There is an employment center nearby that won't require you to get in your car for an hour to go to. I'm
Mm.
talking like office space, light industrial, those kinds of things.
It seems like the emphasis is always on residential. And maybe that's because the demand is so high and the net migration is very high that the county recognizes they have to entitle a lot of residential because people are moving here. But yeah, you're right. What about when they stay and they look for jobs? Do we really expect the people that live out in Sun City Center, Apollo Beach, and Ruskin to drive all the way up to the USF area? I mean, if you're going to talk about those three regional activity centers, I
Hmm.
think that's what they call downtown.
Yeah.
What is it?
We call them key. We've called them a bunch of different things over the years: key economic spaces, regional job centers, whatever. Like,
But those
we're all
three
kind
are
of
always
talking about the same thing.
recognized.
Yeah, there just isn't one within a close proximity to South Hillsborough. But to complicate matters even more, we're also navigating the spillover effects from development on the fringes across county lines. So we have very little control over what happens in Manatee County, Pasco County, Polk.
Mm.
In many ways, we're left to deal with the effects of their development policies
Yeah.
and vice versa. But, we receive more population than we lose. I mean, like, we receive more commuter traffic. The labor market is drawn to Tampa and Hillsborough County because we've already got the existing employment.
Yeah. Those counties like Polk, Pasco, right? They are getting an unbelievable influx of people.
Yeah.
And I think the numbers are pretty shocking. And I want to say those counties are some of the top fastest
Oh,
growing in
yeah.
the
Pasco
nation.
for sure.
Pasco for sure. And so it's like, we know where are all those people going to work and those future generations going to work. And right now it's Tampa. I mean, that's kind of where these people would drive into, or at least Hillsborough County.
Hmm.
So those counties are probably recognizing the same thing you're recognizing here in Hillsborough, where they're probably thinking, okay, we need areas of employment in our own county where people don't have to drive all the way from the suburbs of Lakeland into the USF area. I mean, that's just a crazy drive.
I'm not like super in the weeds on industrial recruitment practices, but whatever it is, Hillsborough already has that secret sauce. I think we're asking a lot of Pasco, Manatee, and Polk to replicate that. We have a lot of the infrastructure already in existence that you need to support those kinds of employment centers. For Pasco, Polk, Manatee, and other counties that have a lot of residential but very low jobs, they've got a long way to go before they can match like what we see out in West Shore.
Right.
They don't have office buildings with 30, 40 floors. So that's a long-term solution, but I don't think we're anywhere near that. At least for the next 25 years, we anticipate most of the labor market being drawn into Hillsborough
Well, and
and Pinellas as well.
I think the labor market will want to be in urban areas too. I don't think we should forget the fact that more businesses are moving away from a suburban office complex and moving into an urban area
Hmm.
where the amenities are outside of the office complex. The office complex doesn't have the cafeteria and the food hall and then this and then that. It's like, I mean, look at Grow Financial. It's like a great example, right? They're moving into the headquarters in Gasworks, and they're moving away from like the Brandon HQ.
Hmm.
And the idea for those employees is kind of cool because instead of being in the suburban headquarters, now they're going to be in the middle of an urban core. Like they can leave the office on a lunch break and have 20 different restaurants to go to, or after work, catch a lightning game, or after work, go get beers with your fellow employees in the area. And that cultural shift is real. That you can't discount that either. It's like the demand for office workers in the areas where people live is absolutely a factor. But also, I think the employers and even the employees want to be in those urban areas. And Tampa is just the most urban area in this entire region until you get over into St. Petersburg, right? But looking at this map right here of Hillsborough County, I mean, Hillsborough County is kind of this like maybe weird, unique place where you only have three incorporated cities, right? We only have Tampa, Plant City, and Temple Terrace.
Yeah.
And Temple Terrace is like basically a part of Tampa. I mean, it's like right there in the
Temple Terrace
city.
is cool in its own right. They've got their own culture.
For sure.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I get your point.
The culture of Temple Terrace. Yeah, of course, man. But it's like that is, for those employees that are relocating from around the country who are used to being in Bethesda or in the Northeast or in the West Coast, when they look at Hillsborough County, they're going to be looking at the city.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to want to trade what they're giving up in the Northeast for like an office park in Valrico.
There's a huge economic benefit to those. Well, that's like a really broad generalization, but there's a There's a tremendous benefit to some sectors being clustered together, research, manufacturing, like, yeah, that all makes sense. And as an urban professional myself, I definitely see the value of, going to a job center that has all those cultural amenities nearby. You just got like more people to go to lunch with. You learn things just from being out on the street. You can bump into someone and have an interesting conversation about something you knew nothing about. So I get that. One thing we were really curious to know was what the effects would have been of COVID restrictions and what happened to work behavior after that. So for a period of time, we were really hot on the prospect of work from home, allowing people to live in suburban Hillsborough or Manatee, but have the employment be where it is. And as a result, like, if you don't have to go into the office, maybe that alleviates some traffic congestion. I think the effect was only for like a blip on the
Yeah.
timeline. And then people said, well, the behavior that we see is people really want to go back to the office. So um,
People love
for
people,
a period
man.
of time, I was really hopeful that work from home would be the next big effect to like create a paradigm shift, but we haven't seen that, unfortunately.
Well, we're a paradigm shift to not have a necessity to have these large office and employment centers and have people work in their own home and thereby reducing traffic and alleviating transportation demand. A
Yeah,
paradigm shift towards
yeah,
that direction.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe we get there, right? But maybe not. Maybe we realize through all of this increase in technology that people do need people at the end of the day, and maybe educating kids virtually and maybe working virtually just is not the most productive and happiest people will be.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to know that. I think the only way we know that is through the advancement of technology. See how it all plays out. It does seem like the more technology we have, the more people crave each other. I mean, look at Starbucks. How Starbucks has they started off as this like Roman cafe concept, this Italian coffee bar, and they moved into this really popular model, and people started to come and show up, and then they started to go more towards a drive-through. And in the past 5 years, it's like, what's the difference between a Starbucks and a Taco Bell?
Yeah.
One place you're getting tacos, one place you're getting coffee, but the model is the same. It's the American version of a fast food coffee place. Now Starbucks is actually sort of rolling that back and realizing, wait, people need each other. Like when people come to a Starbucks and they just get their like microwaved biscuit with their sugary coffee, it's not breeding what that original concept was. Like the original concept was a place for people to go and hang out and have good quality coffee. And if you look at Starbucks' new thing, there was just an article about it. They're moving back towards that. Like they're sort of getting away from the drive-through model. Remember a few years ago, they started kicking people out who were like using the Wi-Fi in the bathrooms. And now they're kind of moving towards this like more human connected business model. And I think as we are so connected to technology and we have to order everything online and we don't really interact as much, I think people are going to start to crave it.
I'll give a plug for Heart. I think you can get that connection on your ride to work if you choose to not take your own car, hop on a bus, have good conversations with people. A couple of years ago, actually, so I ride the bus into work sometimes.
Very cool.
I live in St. Pete, working downtown Tampa, and there's like this dude who was on my bus that I would see all the time. I never like worked up the courage to go introduce myself, but he was a blind guy, and then I ended up writing a poem about him because I thought he was so interesting. That's like going way off topic, but
Interesting.
yeah, that's like a connection just from riding transit. And there's so many stories across social media platforms like Reddit and whatever, where people talk about the encounters that they have riding transit, and it's really inspiring.
This episode is brought to you by the official remodeler of the TBD podcast, Kohler House Remodeling Company. Built on the belief that every homeowner deserves a premium experience, Kohler House is redefining high-end home remodeling with their commitment to integrity, craftsmanship, and quality communication. Their work speaks for itself, from condos in the towers of Channelside to 100-year-old homes in South Tampa, creating spaces that are both stunning and functional. What sets Kohler House Remodeling Company apart is their dedication to not only transforming homes into beautiful spaces, but to elevating the standard of residential general contracting. From concept to completion, every detail is handled with care, ensuring a process that's as smooth as the results are impressive. To learn more, check out our partner's website at kohlerhaus.net, KOHLERHAUS.net. This episode is sponsored by Chansey Architecture and Interior Design. Rooted in the heart of Ybor City for over 35 years, Walt Chansey and his team are trailblazers in their field. Beyond their work across the United States and the Bahamas, Chansey has shaped some of the most iconic residential and commercial spaces that serve as gateways to Cigar City, including Casa Marti and Casa Gomez. What sets Chansey Design apart is their ability to preserve the soul and character of historic buildings while seamlessly integrating modern design and functionality. They blend tradition with innovation, creating spaces that honor the past while meeting today's needs. Check out their work at www.chanseydesign.com. Would you consider yourself a Reddit guy? I mean, do you like that website? You hang out on there often?
Yeah.
David and I were searching, what were we looking on Reddit for something, and we found that someone posted about this show, and people were like taking digs at us, calling us the Tampa Bay Gentrifier podcast or whatever. There was a ton of people commenting about it, but I just want to have conversations with people affecting our region and our city. You know, that's all I'm trying to do. I just like talking to people about the city. And
If I saw it, I would have given it a downvote. I think you guys
okay,
are great.
thank you. I appreciate that.
I get that connection on my commute when I drive because I pop in your podcast and I feel like you're sitting in the passenger seat next to me.
Yeah, man, people are going to crave other people. And when you look at old pictures, or if anyone listening talks to your great parents or great grandparents, and you sort of realize that back then people were way connected, not only to each other, but the community itself. Like, more people were engaged in activism and voting and boards and organizations. It was all about the local Rotary Club and the chamber and like 80%, you know, what's the voting turnout back in 1930? I bet you it's like 70%.
Yeah.
The District 5 special election here in Tampa for Tampa City Council, that you know, you'll get like 8,000, 10,000 people maybe to vote, but there's like 50,000 registered voters. You know, we've just become so far disconnected from one another that technology might be the catalyst where people turn away, you know, and they move back and get connected. And I think that from a planning perspective, that should be recognized more. And I hope county commissioners recognize that that's the sort of the way the culture is moving back towards connectivity. And the reason why I wanted to bring up the Hillsborough County map, I'm pretty sure I saw an article very recently, David, if you could find it. There was a county commissioner talking about adding 2 seats to the Board of County Commissioners and sort of where those seats will go. And we should pull up the article so I don't misspeak here, but I believe he might have been talking about how the seats should be added to areas out in the suburbs because that's where all the growth is going to occur.
Yeah, I think that was Commissioner Bowles at the Charter Review Board hearing.
And if you look at this map, you can see the districts.
Yeah.
And you're probably more familiar than I am, but there's 3 countywide seats and 4 districted seats?
I think you're right. Yeah.
So more Hillsborough commissioners, stay tuned. A referendum to create 9 single-member districts won't be heard to voters just yet. So this is Commissioner Bowles. Or no. Commissioner Michael Owen.
This is an old one.
What is this?
Former Commissioner Owen. He might have brought up the same thing, but what I was thinking of is a meeting that just happened like a week or 2 ago. They were discussing the same issue because they were talking about number of registered voters in each district and the population growth. So some of the county districts are not expecting much. District 4 is huge. It's most of East County and South, and that's where the population's going. So they're anticipated to boom, basically, and they're going to have maybe 2 or 3 times as many voters as some of the other districts in the county.
Here's the problem. The needs of the city are different from the needs of a rural voter, right? And when you have 300,000 people living in a city and 600,000 living in a suburban area, those 300,000 people living in the city have completely different needs. Mm-hmm. The city of Tampa has complained for so long about our roads and our transportation, and we want a streetcar extension, and our city wants life again. We want to grow. And if you add 2 more seats out in the county that are worried about, where's my parking? How do I get to downtown quick and back? We need more expressways. They live a suburban lifestyle. That's fine. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. But they're going to be voting for those interests, and the interests of the city are going to get completely drowned out if this happens. So I hope it doesn't. And I saw it brought up, and I wanted you to pull up that map, David, because we have kind of an issue with our districts too. Like our district here in the city, I think this is Wastel's district, South Tampa, downtown, Davis Islands, right? Very
Uh,
urban area.
Commissioner Wastel's district's countywide.
Is it countywide?
Yeah. The
Who
one you're
who
talking about, I think, is Commissioner Cohen.
click it, I think you're right. Click that. It is Cohen. Yeah, because he's District 1, right? Didn't Harry Cohen say that on the show? Yeah, so but think about his job, and we talked about that when Harry was on the show, where it's like you represent people in the city, but then you also have a constituency in Gibsonton, and then
Yeah.
you also have a constituency in Town and Country. If you're going to add districts, why don't you consolidate the city? The city should be a district, so the interests of the people of the city are represented. Like you could split District 1 and have West Chase and Town and Country be its own district, right?
Mhm.
Those people need a voice, but then the city should have its own voice as well. I think adding districts to the suburban area only drowns us out here in the city. And I'm afraid that if that happens, we'll never get this stuff done. Pull up the other slide, David, where you've got the priority list. Good luck if that happens. Airport to downtown premium transit. What the hell good does that do if I live in Gibsonton? I'm not worried about that. Or West Chase. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like all of the things on this list. This is the 2024 TPO priority list amendment. You have on here the Brightline multimodal connections, the TECO Streetcar extension, airport to downtown premium transit, which is some sort of a fixed rail system,
Mhm.
right? And then you've got the HART CSX study, which has been talked about for a long time and is really exciting. But none of those things are politically popular in the suburban area. Why would I want to pay for that if I don't use it? I live in Fishhawk Ranch. I go to Publix. I pick my kids up from school. Why do I care that my tax dollars are going to extend the streetcar in the city? So it's like
Yeah.
it's
I
almost
mean, regarding like developing new transit projects or any public good, right? The individual value is never going to be as much as the social value. So I think that there is a good economic argument to make that even if you don't have easy access to use a transit line living in Gibsonton, you still receive spillover benefits of it. The folks in downtown Tampa that might be clogging up roads in your neighborhood, you get them out of a car, you get them onto the transit line. Yeah, you're not using it because you're not the passenger, but your benefit is that you have uncongested traffic in Gibsonton, Brandon, Valrico, whatever. Um, but I do understand that's a really difficult argument to make, and I'm not sure it always resonates with the voters when they go to the ballot box to support surtax increases and things like that. But maybe we'll get there one day. Eventually, the county roads could become so congested that, yes, people see, all right, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
is that part of your role as executive director to sort of explain that to a commissioner that represents a constituency that doesn't see the benefit? But I mean, this is your job. This is what you study. You have sort of the receipts on this issue where some of these benefits that a voter might not use or their family might not use, they receive a benefit from other factors, right? If I'm on the if I'm on the streetcar, that means I'm off the road, and
Mhm.
although you're not on the streetcar, that's one less car off the road. Is that part of your role, sort of laying that out for these commissioners so that they can explain that to their constituency?
Yeah, definitely. We do a lot of technical analysis. We try to lay out a really comprehensive argument, both in support of items that we're asking for action on, as well as identifying the concerns that they should have. So, providing information to board members is like one of the most critical aspects of my job. Um, going back a second, talking about the breakdown of the county commission and whether they're responsive or receptive to the needs of City of Tampa. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're unaware or discounting them, but that's also to a large extent like a function of where they stand politically, like what their interests are. On the county commission, we've seen over the years district-wide commissioners that definitely approached their job with a very Tampa-centric viewpoint. So it's not a certainty that just because they're county commission that they won't be mindful of what the city's needs are.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it just takes an elected official that is reasonable
Mhm.
and listens to their constituents and then talks to you, the expert, and then formulates, a vote, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we kind of all hope for. I think unfortunately, you see elected officials who have loud voices in their ears of a certain constituency that doesn't represent the whole. And then that's sort of how misrepresentation can occur. And I think that's how maybe sometimes the city doesn't get what they want, and the county gets, hundreds of millions of dollars for roads and this and that. And we're sitting here in the city with like, some issues that we
Yeah.
need to work
I could
through.
see that. Yeah, of course.
Can we talk about what we have right here? So you dropped this pamphlet, Access 2050 Executive Summary. You said this is like hot off the press. For people just listening, it's a brochure basically that has some interesting information in it. But what exactly is this? Explain this.
It's good coffee table literature for sure. Access 2050 is the most recent update that we did to the long range transportation plan. So, as the TPO, one of our core responsibilities is to do, I guess, the core responsibility is to do long range transportation planning. To do that, there's a ton of work that goes into it, um, very technical, public engagement, a lot of the things we've already discussed, but what we try to do is examine the existing population, existing job projections. We have a really good idea of what the traffic issues are currently. We try to forecast what the county is going to look like over the next 25 years so that we can establish a vision to address those issues as they start to come online. So, with the 2050 plan, some of the limitations that or constraints that we're working within is that to address future transportation issues, we're not going to assume that money's going to fall out of the sky. At the time that we were kind of putting together this plan, we were a little unsure as to whether or not the CIT would pass, community investment tax. That wasn't a certainty that we could count on. Surtax didn't seem like the right time to bring that up. So looking at existing revenues, assuming that they'll be consistent over a 25-year period, what can we do to address the needs of the community now, 5, 10, 15, 25 years into the future?
With a realistic approach that recognizes the dynamic nature of these politics, right? Like as an example, safety spotlight, Cass Street Bridge separated bike lane intersection mural at the Riverwalk. Well, I'm pretty sure I just read that you're not even allowed to do murals on the streets anymore. Wasn't that new news? Was that at the state
Yeah,
level?
yeah. The state guidance was that anything that's not documented in the Green Book, like the engineering handbook or the Florida Design Manual, basically anything that's decorative can't go onto public right away.
No more Blue Lives Matter, no more Black Lives Matter, no more nothing on the roads.
Yeah, I think that's the implication of it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
did
but
hear I did hear from a contact that the green bike lanes are safe though.
okay, so we're not getting rid of those.
So that's something to be happy about.
All right, well that's good. We need those. But to your point, boom, there it is. I mean, when was this created? This
The,
was
the intersection?
no, this pamphlet here.
Oh, that's hot off the press. We just approved that in like October. We had to turn around and amend it to add a new project in February. We're getting ready to do something similar in August. The county really wants to develop Van Dyke Road, so we're going to work on adding that to the Access 2050 and August board meeting.
There's some pretty interesting facts in here. One of the ones I wanted to ask you about specifically was it says here between 2030 and 2050, $18 billion in transportation funding is available in the
Yeah,
TPO area,
yeah,
but $47 billion in needs are identified in the Access 2050 plan. That's
yeah.
a huge gap.
Huge deficit. Yeah, to get the performance to the point where the public is demanding would require more than twice the amount of money that we have available. And it would also need to be allocated in a way that the public has told us that they want it to be. When we went out to get feedback from the public last year and we did this for like 4 to 6 months, I want to say. We launched a survey that had a ton of responses. City of Tampa, Plant City, Temple Terrace, every corner of Hillsborough County. The number one demand that we heard was fixed guideway transit. That's
Yeah.
like far and away the top priority. But it's really tough for us to deliver those kinds of projects. So while it's the top priority, we don't view that as a fundable priority, at least not in the near future. So the second highest scoring issues that we heard were reducing traffic, no surprise there,
Can I pause
followed
you
by
there real quick
safety. Yeah,
on
go ahead.
the fixed rail? So I was gonna say, we could post something like, "Oh, the sky's blue," and you get 15 comments about, well, "Hey, we need light rail." Like people are very, very
Yeah.
adamant about light rail in our region, and I am too, and I think it's completely necessary. So if the public's will overwhelmingly, the number one priority in their eyes is fixed guideway rail, why isn't it possible? I mean, the numbers that they spent, they just opened up a bridge that cost $1 billion, 275, right? The Howard
Hmm.
Franklin. I saw another project. I know Thea's spending almost $750 million. It's like the money's there. It's just not being allocated towards these specific things. So when you said, I think unfundable is the word you
Yeah.
used. Is that political will? Like, why is it not fundable?
Policy direction, I would say, is the most important piece to latch onto there. You're right, there is money available. Like if we operated in a vacuum, you would see that the state takes in however many billions of dollars a year. If the will of the public, the elected officials at all levels of government was to invest all of it in a light rail system, yeah, it could happen. But the policy direction and rules from the locals up to the state and even federal government kind of prohibit that. But what the public probably won't be excited to hear is that with all of this money, there's always strings attached. It's not allowable for FDOT to take its entire budget and say we're going to put 100% of this behind a light rail system. That's just not how it works. Same thing at the federal level. When Congress is deciding how much money they're going to make available for the transit administration versus highways, that would be the right time to get involved in those conversations and say, I would like to see more of it allocated to transit operators.
Hmm.
And that's basically how it works at all levels of government.
So the public's will is there, right? The public has voted that they want fixed guideway rail. The money exists, whether it's spent on the right things is a political debate. So it sounds like the the politicians are the instruments that would need to be changed in order for us to get a guided rail system. Like if the next election, if for whatever reason at the Hillsborough County level or whatever level necessary for there to be a change in this regard,
Hmm.
if the politicians elected were like rail, 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 well, sounds like you've got the money, you've got the politicians, and then you've got the public support as well. Sounds like it could happen. How are you guys? Do you guys factor in politics, meaning like, well, this commissioner is probably going to win and this person sort of votes in this direction. And so we kind of have to plan towards those types of policies. Like how do you add policy to your planning formula? Like do you is that part of your equation?
The direct answer to your question is no, we don't anticipate political shifts to that extent. The way that we go about approximating how much money will be available to spend on transportation is just by looking at previous trends. And in a way, that does take into account shifting politics.
Yeah.
Because you look at the budget set aside for transportation at the city level, county level, average that out, average that out over the past 10, 20 years, that does take into account the shifting political dynamics and say, all right, this is a reasonable amount of money to expect that will be spent on transportation over the next 25 years. Um,
Mm.
but no, we're not anticipating that like one person gets voted in, one person gets voted out, and the entire paradigm is going to shift. It doesn't really work that way. And the real reason is because although politicians have a shelf life, there are competing demands that are going to be vying for that same amount of money. Like, to put it in context of Tampa, you're talking about, like, yeah, there's money there to build a light rail, but are the folks that want parks and healthcare and police and fire, are they going to be willing to accept that no money is going to get put toward those uses and instead opt for a light rail system? Probably not likely. Anything could happen, but for us to make an educated plan, we want to assume that existing trends will continue on into the future.
So I stopped you on the guided, the fixed rail, right? But I think you were getting ready to say that second priority from the public when you guys asked the public.
Alleviating traffic jams,
Traffic
which
jams.
which ranked higher than the last time we did this survey, like 5 years ago. I think at the time the second highest priority was maintaining existing infrastructure. The public now is telling us that they're tired of sitting in traffic, so they're directing us to do things like improve intersections to enhance like the flow. Um, there's a lot of technology that we can use to get more cars through an intersection, get people to work. Yeah, that's kind of it. If
It's
you want me to go into more detail, I could,
Well,
but
no,
that's kind of the
it's
boring
just
part.
fascinating me that is such a huge pinch point, and that's like on the bottom of my personal list because the way I live, I mean, I live in like the Ballast Point area. I commute up Bayshore. I walk around in the city. My list is like I need more shade on the
Yeah.
sidewalks. I need wider sidewalks. We need bike lanes. We need safe streets to cross. We need vehicles to pay attention to pedestrians. We need better roadways, smooth roadways. Some of the brick streets are falling apart. Those either need to be paved over or sort of redone. It's interesting that the person that voted for that probably lives in a very car centric lifestyle, and the people that maybe live the city life, that traffic jams aren't really on your radar. So those two different worlds living together in the same voting poll is really fascinating to me. Do you look at sort of who votes? Like, I'm sure you don't ask for what's your name, what's your address.
Yeah.
You probably have to put out a blind programmer. How do you know who votes for these things?
To have the results of the survey be most reflective, or yeah, to have the results of the survey flow into the plan in the most fair and, like, forgive the term, like, balanced way,
Sure.
we don't really want to factor in like where all the responses are coming from. Our role is to do a plan for the entire community, considering everyone's needs. There are parts of the plan that I think speak more to the desires of those living in Tampa. The desire for transit, I think majority of the responses supportive of that are coming from City of Tampa residents, but not entirely. Like, there are a lot of folks out in suburbia that want to have a transit system.
True.
Um, Breaking it down by political jurisdiction, I think the city of Tampa was also really hot on alleviating traffic jams, but they also desire like bus service and trails and
Yeah.
those other kinds of
Well, I
things.
say that now. My kids are 2 and a month old. Like by the time they start going to school, I guarantee traffic will be back on my list,
Yeah.
right? So it's really not a city versus county thing at all. It's just that right now in my life, right? Those are the priorities. Everyone's are different. As my children go to school, and I'm going to baseball over here, and then I got to drive over to West Tampa for that. It's like, well, then traffic will become an issue because I got to tell you, ooh, in the afternoon, coming up McDill, the academy gets out of school, St. John's right up here on Platte. Like it can get dicey. I feel, but again, the lifestyle of someone will dictate what those needs are. And I think it would be really important to see where people are picking these priorities, because I think it would identify pain points.
The
Like,
value
wow,
of
this
the value
community
of
really votes for traffic jams. Wow,
Yeah.
they really see that as an issue. That's an area we should sort of target.
Well, the value of those projects also isn't mutually exclusive. Like what we were kind of talking about earlier is, if you value having less traffic on the roads, investments in bus service help that. Investments in safety projects also help that. Like traffic jams as a result of somebody getting hit, and then you got to wait for law enforcement to show up, take a report. Like that all plays a role in the amount of traffic that we see in Tampa. So Investments in other types of projects keep saying spillover benefits, but it's real. Like if your only stated preference is that I don't have to sit in traffic, get other people on the bus, get them on bikes, get them on sidewalks, give them the option, and you will get some of what you desire as well.
Yeah, and the person that is upset that they have a traffic jam at a particular intersection, reworking that intersection would actually probably benefit the pedestrians too. Maybe you make it safer and you make it more efficient at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Technology is probably looked at as well in planning where you could like time traffic lights, time interstate exits. I mean, are you guys looking at like AI or any technology to be implemented? Because to me, that's like the most dynamic thing you could do. Some of these, I mean, looking through these numbers, it's unbelievable how much some of this stuff costs. But I would imagine you could you could alleviate traffic with AI, with traffic signals and stuff like that, quicker and less expensive than like redoing entire roadways.
Definitely plays a role, not so much for my agency, but the traffic ops teams, like the signal engineers for all the local governments, they're definitely using AI. There's like a tremendous amount of data that goes into figuring out how many seconds a light needs to stay green for to be able to flush that queue. That's like really getting outside of my wheelhouse, but I find it fascinating because you're right. There's just so much that goes into figuring out what's the optimum mix for signal synchronization and the phases and all that stuff.
Timing for events too, like the AI platform could know, oh, there's a lightning game on Tuesday. We need to keep the light green for an extra 10 seconds or whatever, or at 3 o'clock in the morning, we don't have to have such a long signal delay. We can be quick between red and green,
Yeah,
stuff like
I'll
that.
hype up City of Tampa on that. Their mobility division has always been really forward thinking, and it was almost a decade ago that they started experimenting with early iterations of AI.
Wow.
Back when I first got hired on, I was involved in this procurement process for something called Waycare. It's like an AI platform that takes into account special events, weather, historical traffic patterns, just like a ton of different stuff, and tells you um, where you should expect traffic jams, where you should expect crashes. And the value of it for the city was if they knew that a traffic jam was likely to occur or a crash, they could go stage law enforcement and other first responders close to that location so that if it happens, they can clear it out real quick and get operations back to normal.
Wow. 10
So yeah,
years ago.
they've always been on the cutting edge of this stuff. Thea as well.
That's very interesting. I think that idea is amazing. They were so early on, 10 years
Hmm.
ago. Like who was talking about AI? I guess the city of Tampa was. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
We've been really fortunate, City of Tampa, Tampa, Hillsborough County generally. I think we've got a reputation for having a desire to be innovative. Um, I don't remember if it was current mayor or the previous one told city staff to treat the city like a lab. Go out and find solutions that are a little bit off the wall but work. And
I love
the
that.
Tampa staff took that to heart. I mean, they've invested in Waycare. Yeah, the connected vehicle pilot from the feds was launched on the Expressway Authority, the Selman. Um, we're actually like we have a reputation for being cut kind of cutting edge across the nation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's encouraging to hear.
Hmm.
I mean, you want to know that your planners and your government is thinking ahead like that.
We've had
All we're
demos
trying to
with
do is go to
Waymo and other
work.
autonomous vehicles. There's not too many cities across the country that can say they've had an autonomous vehicle driving on the city streets.
Wow. That's amazing. Let's talk about this right here. We touched on the 2024 TPO priority list amendment. Was this from the data you talked about earlier with those priorities? Or explain, I guess, what we're looking at here.
So this was an amendment that happened last year when we presented our list of priority projects to our board. The one of its advisory committees recommended bumping these projects higher on the list. So on this list, I'm gonna call it LOP, it stands for List of Priority Projects. It's really an inventory of projects that are trying to get funded, either with local, state, or federal dollars. Mostly state and federal, like discretionary grants, but the advisory committee and then the board said they want to see these projects delivered, so bump them up on the list give them a better shot at getting that money if it becomes available.
And so that was done, and David slightly scrolled down a little bit because you can actually see where they were bumped up.
Yeah.
So airport to downtown rail. Can I say rail? What does premium transit mean to you?
Premium transit just means fast and reliable.
So
I
it
mean, I
doesn't
could kind
mean,
of go into detail, but it's not limited to rail.
but the picture you have here does have some sort of like a, what is that, like a modern streetcar on
Could
the
be a
far left?
BRT or modern streetcar. I'm not exactly sure what picture we selected, but um, the value of the project would be that it could operate uninterrupted, possibly in its own lane. That could be bus rapid transit, could be rail, could be something else. That project is in the very early stages of development, and I believe the city and the airport are kind of taking the lead on that. But we wanted to rank it highly because when there's enough information available for us to go out and get funds, we're going to focus our attention on that.
Well, it says ranked 64. That doesn't sound very high,
It's all relative.
unless there's like
Yeah, like
500 items.
these kinds of projects tend to fall pretty low on our priority list because we don't, like on our own, we don't have enough money to deliver them. It's almost a certainty that we're going to have to go out and get federal grants to supplement the local dollars committed to the project. For the purposes of federal authorization, being on the list at all is good enough.
Mm.
Like if it was the number one project or the 100th project out of 100, the feds are just going to look to see, hey, is this on the priority list? If yes, checkbox, and then they'll evaluate the project on its merits before deciding whether they want to give us the money or not.
So airport to downtown 64, TECO Streetcar Extension 65, Brightline 66, the CSX line, which is described here, I think, is like downtown to USF. And I'm assuming that means light rail, right? CSX line. You'd put a light rail system on that. That's number 95. So what's number 1, 2, 5, 10, 15? Like what's up in that higher top 20?
Yeah, let me think. So the top tier of projects would be a category we describe as smart cities. I think you've got an old one up here. Um, we have a new priority list, but um, the top tier of projects, ones that kind of fall number one to number, let's say, a dozen, are traffic alleviation projects. So technology to make intersections function better, um, turn lanes at intersections, those kinds of things.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. The county is so focused on the cars and the traffic, and I get it. I mean, we have 1.5 million people that are all car dependent. I'm car dependent, and I live in the city. But geez, at a certain point, is it sustainable? I don't. It's not your question to answer, of course, something like that. I mean, you can say your personal opinion, obviously, if you want to, but I just feel that you can't keep bulldozing the orange grove and the cow pastures and building suburban areas and then expect the traffic to ever get better. All we're going to be doing in this county is paving roads and maintaining them. And these list of priorities will never change. These four really exciting things that I'm super gung ho about are
Yeah.
always going to stay at the bottom of the list. So it's not surprising that those top, I don't know, 30, 50 items have to do with maybe even more. Maybe the entire list is filled with car related improvements, right? Whether it's, building a new bridge, building a new road, maintaining roads or whatever. I guess you can see on that map right there, David, go back up. This is the priority list till 2031.
Yeah, so it's color coded to show you what type of projects fall on the priority list. The ones that I think you're kind of honing in on are that darker forest green. Those are the major transit lines. The number one ranked project category is smart cities. Again, that's like our key word for traffic congestion. Good repair is investments in existing infrastructure. That red dot is the Hart Heavy Maintenance Facility that's looking to get built out. Vision Zero is safety projects. Real Choices encompasses a lot of things, but improving bus service, trails, side paths, and then the light green, which you see a lot of lines on, are highway widenings.
Highway widenings.
Yeah.
So I see Interbay highway widening. Scroll back up, David. What you getting fancy for, David? Scrolling everywhere. Interbay Boulevard highway. What does that mean? I mean, is that going to go from like a 2 lane to a 4 lane or something like that?
Sometimes the local governments submit priorities as like a place marker. So, regarding Interbay, I'm not exactly sure what the details
It
of that
does,
are.
but this right here, what we're looking at, doesn't mean more lanes. It could mean like better infrastructure in terms of like, an intersection is redone, something like that.
A highway widening could include like an elevation, extension, widening, could include a lot of things. Regarding that, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the details on that specific project are, but if you take a step back and kind of squint at it, get a good impression of what the county's overall priorities are, the local governments as well as FDOT. Like there's just a tremendous amount of light green lines on there, and by comparison, very few dark green and not as many purple.
Got it. Yeah, I think on Interbay, when they say major projects here, highway, from what I know, it's more about intersection improvements, better road paint. They've added stop signs. I think they're actually going to make it more pedestrian friendly, adding sidewalks. I don't think they're like widening that road down
It's all
there.
good things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
With
all great
with the
things.
like the scope of some of these projects, they're going to include things beyond just one type of improvement. If you call a widening an improvement, and jury's still out on that because it's different for different communities, you call it a highway project, but more than likely it's also going to include some bike facilities,
Well, it's a weird word,
safety
highway. I
improvements.
mean, it sounds like an interstate or something,
Yeah.
taking the highway. But
We'll call it road for this conversation.
right. Yeah. I mean, roadway improvement is something we need, from the county line to the county line, right? And it's good to know that by looking at this map, there's not an area that's being concentrated. This looks like a county-wide plan. I mean, there's things being done all the way down south and the north and over to Plant City, and it's good to know it. It seems like the money and the funds and the projects are sort of being distributed across the
Yeah.
entire county.
Yeah. We've done a really good job traditionally of trying to allocate the funding first by need. Uh, and again, like we do recognize that each jurisdiction has its own unique needs. So, kind of like a function of the methodology we use to distribute these takes into account that allocation equity, if I'm allowed to use that word. We don't want to have a bunch of projects clustered in one part of the county and then leave the others out in the lurch.
Yeah, 100%. It's got to be
Distributional equity? Should probably like trademark that word.
distributional equity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Handing out some of the money. Well, what did you say in the very beginning about a grant? Or is that kind of an offline thing?
No, we could talk about that.
Let's dig into it.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, right? I mean, it's an opportunity for the county to receive a good amount of federal money that is unique to where we are.
Yeah.
Meaning the money's been sort of allocated to different areas around Florida, but we have a really good chance at getting ours, and these other places might not have the same opportunity. You
Yeah.
were mentioning something
So
like that?
yeah, so what we're talking about, when I walked in here, I was kind of complaining that it's been a tough day, but it's a problem that's at the same time good and bad. About a year ago, my agency applied to get some federal money to overhaul our priority process. The map that you have shown here is a list of projects that are presented to us by the local governments. And we do our thing, kind of evaluating their proposals and ranking them based on the merits that we see. But because the county is connected also to Pinellas and Pasco, we think that it's going to be really helpful to also take into account what they've got going on so that there's continuity across county lines. And what this grant would allow us to do is develop projects in a way that's more consistent and aligned with our counterparts in those two counties, while also giving the public a more meaningful way of weighing in on what they want to see advanced. Um, in my role, kind of like in charge of everything the TPO does, one thing that I pointed out is um, the public is allowed to offer feedback on projects once they get to a certain point. They don't really have a lot of opportunities to weigh in on the merits on the front end. It's really only after the local governments have developed these things to a certain point, they've kind of developed them and they know that eventually they will get built and the public can say, yes, I like it or no, I don't. We want to be able to get in touch and have conversations with people so they can tell us what they need in their neighborhood, even if it's not registered on our radar. Get what I'm
Mm,
saying?
yeah, so it's kind of flexible in nature. Interesting. That's cool. How much money is it?
It's about a mil, a little more than that.
And it's gonna give you guys the capability to basically data search, what
Yeah.
priorities would be.
Quantitative and qualitative. Like the quantitative, I think, is going to be the easy lift because we have a really sophisticated way of evaluating these projects and we have access to a ton of data. The qualitative part is what I'm most interested in, like opening this up for public feedback, giving residents like a real meaningful way of providing comment and then synthesizing that, turning it into actionable information. So that's what I'm really key on. But the issue that we're having is we won the grant more than a year ago, or we were promised that we would receive the grant a year ago. With all the changes at the federal level, it's kind of been on pause. And we just heard from one of our federal contacts that it's not paused, which is good that the money's available, but we're on a real short time frame to execute an agreement, get legal review, do everything that we need to do so that we can actually get the money. And if we don't meet that deadline, there's a really good chance that we might not ever see it.
Hence the tough day. Dang. Sounds like it's not critical, but like would really help our area
Yeah,
out to get that
it
funding.
would be really, really helpful.
Because Florida's grown so much, I would imagine at the state level there's a planning organization. Does the FDOT have like a planning organization with inside of it?
Yeah, FDOT has Office of Policy and Planning. They do a lot of what we do just at the state scale.
Huh.
Yeah.
So maybe they take what you guys have and what other counties and municipalities have and put it all together on like an overarching macro scale.
Yeah.
Do they ever give you feedback? Meaning like, you know, do they ever provide you direction?
Yes, at times. I mean, we want to be consistent with that. We want to have consistency among our projects and make sure that they're not like interacting in a negative way with what the state plans to do. But across Florida, we have, I don't want to say ideal because, that wouldn't exactly be accurate, but we have a really good process wherein a lot of these transportation needs are funneled up from the local level. That was one of the reasons why MPOs, my TPO was created to develop grassroots support for projects and then transmit those needs over to the state and to the feds so that they're not just building projects without us having an opportunity to tell them whether we like it or not.
That makes complete sense, right? At the state level, it might be hard for them to identify priorities. And it's
Yeah.
much easier for you guys to do that because you're here, right? You're local.
Well, yeah, they've got a really good, sometimes not great process for identifying statewide needs. The roads that they're really keeping track of are the big ones, I-4, 275,
Right.
75 in our area. But what happens on the local roads is not well known in Tallahassee.
Mm,
Like the folks in Tallahassee that are making these decisions rely on TPOs to tell them what we need rather than vice versa.
got it. So is part of your role too to go up to Tallahassee and transfer some of that data at the state level?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We do that every year through this process.
So what we're looking at and what we've been talking about is the pitch deck for our area's needs. And
Mhm.
this is sort of shown to Tallahassee and hey, this is what Hillsborough is
Yeah,
looking at.
that's exactly it.
Wow. So are you tracking the actually Ashley Drive? I wanted to talk about Ashley. Are you tracking the removal of some of these, or at least the conversation about the removal of some of these highways? I mean, this I think is like an FDOT thing, but I know in St. Petersburg they've talked about removing 175,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then here in Tampa they're talking about removing the Ashley exit
Yeah.
ramp, that whole system there and redeveloping that area. Is that a part of anything that you're involved with?
Yeah,
Any impacts of that?
we're involved in the conversations before Ashley, before 175. You remember that there was some support from the community to um, at least study what would happen if 275 were converted to a different type of facility.
Yeah, shout out
So
Josh
yeah, I
Frank.
was
Right.
yeah, I know Josh well, and he's been on our advisory committee. He's not anymore, but yeah, I've known him for a while. We were intimately involved in that project process concept. Yeah,
Huh. So it moved beyond a concept, and the TPO was actually looking at what
yeah.
the effects of the removal of a highway. Now, when something like, well, go ahead. I mean,
Yeah, we had a study that we were trying to get funding for. Um, Never got around, not that we didn't get around, we were never able to get that off the ground because the cost would have been just tremendous. And with us developing recommendations for 275, ultimate discretion, like the authority on that, would be FDOT. And it didn't seem plausible that they would do what the recommendations could have asked them to do. Like that would have been a really transformative project, but I don't think that there was support at any level for that.
no, and they have already done the opposite. They've
Yeah.
widened it. They've spent a ton of money on the sound barriers. It actually looks great. I mean, I just drove it the other night. It looks really nice, and it's wide, and there's a lot of capacity on that road. And it seems like, I mean, I don't live in Seminole Heights and or up along that corridor, but I would imagine that those big sound barriers have helped dramatically because you didn't really have that before.
I think so. One of my assistant director actually lives off Hialeah, or sorry, not Hialeah. I'm of Cayuga, and she's like a block away from the interstate, and she's a big fan of it.
Oh,
Now
good.
when she's
Okay.
working from home, I don't hear the humming of cars in the background.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good. It's just I would imagine when a local are you a government organization, or are you kind of like a quasi
We're government.
government?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine when a local government organization like you guys partners with, a firm like Josh's, or even if that was Josh personally who
Mm.
created that plan, I would imagine FDOT and the federal government looks at it and they're like, what are you guys trying to do here?
They would have been involved, like when we're scoping out a project. And when I say project, I really mean like study, because that's what we're doing, developing like a planning study and a recommendation for what to do with 275. We have preliminary discussions with all the stakeholders to make sure that they support it. We don't want to produce a study that will ultimately lead to nothing. And I won't go so far as to say that that was FDOT's position, but it was pretty clear that that study wasn't going to go anywhere.
But it's a really interesting thought experiment. And I'm curious to ask you, did you go down the road of what would this look like in terms of traffic? You know, what does it look like in terms of evacuations for hurricanes? You have a Taylor Swift concert in town and Gasper, is it possible? I mean, from what you looked at, was it viable?
Kind of put me on the spot to try to remember the analysis that was produced a long time ago. I want to say that the modeling showed too much traffic would be operating on the local network, and it would just, like the
Overwhelm.
level of service on Nebraska, Florida, all those parallel corridors would just be terrible. Like,
Yeah.
not to say that there couldn't have been other retrofits to accommodate that, but if you were to convert 275 to a boulevard or reduce the lanes, that's not going to stop people from Pasco and North Hillsborough from traveling further south, and they would have to go somewhere, whether that's Dale Mabry or Veterans or some other north-south road. The traffic congestion would just be like off the charts,
Yeah, that makes sense.
assuming no other changes. Like in Josh's concept, he factored in a lot of transit,
I
and
was going to say he
yeah,
paired it with like some sort of a
yeah.
rail system that would travel along that.
Yeah, that was the missing factor. If you were to model it with a robust like north-south transit connection, yeah, maybe the results aren't grim, but that's an assumption that is also really uncertain whether or not we could accommodate that.
And the amount of funding it would take and the work it would take to do that conversion for what sounds like not necessarily a huge alleviation of traffic. I mean, it would be great for the city, right? But I don't know that it would be great for the region, because how do you get the people all up in North Hillsborough and Pasco and Polk
Yeah.
and Hernando coming down through to go to Pinellas, and that doesn't sound like that part of it would be alleviated at all. Sounds like might even be amplified in a negative way.
I think that's the discontinuity of the reference point. Like Josh, I will say, like, he's a good friend of mine. I really appreciated that somebody was willing to think outside the box. But the wall that concept ran up against is DOT is planning for traffic flows across the entire state. Like, yes, Hillsborough is a key stakeholder because the road is within our county, but they also have to consider the impacts on Pasco, Citrus, Hernando, Pinellas, really all the cars that are on 275, what happens to them?
Right.
And so I'm not saying either one is right in this instance, but the frame of reference is just different.
Right.
And that discontinuity made it really difficult for the supporters of that boulevard conversion to understand what DOT is considering when they say this is unworkable.
Yeah, I know that was kind of a really passionate thing here locally a few years
Yeah.
ago. But from FDOT standpoint, they're looking at this thing holistically, and I bet they didn't for a second see it as viable. But again, like you said, really, really cool that someone stepped up, thought outside the box, and put that plan in place. Because although it might not work now for a large project like 275, it certainly can work in St. Pete for 175. It could certainly work in Tampa for the Ashley
Hmm.
corridor. And thinking outside the box could be really inspiring for other smaller projects too. So it's cool that whole thing was expressed and the planning commission was involved.
I think so too. Some people might not think so fondly about it. There's a lot of hurt feelings. There were a lot of conflict points and even like long-standing tensions among the Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights community, DOT, Hillsborough County. Like there was just a lot of reasons for them to not be playing nice. The application didn't fit, but what I loved was the energy and the creativity of the idea. Like while 275 wasn't the right application, bringing that kind of energy and those ideas, eventually, if we keep thinking outside the box like that, we will find an application where we can make something happen. 275, maybe not now, but there's a lot of roadways in Hillsborough County. Eventually, we'll find one where we can do something like that.
Absolutely. I hope so too. And this grant you talked about, this $1.1 million, could that facilitate a creative project like we're talking about?
Yeah, putting us in touch with people that are thinking about things differently than professional planners are, I don't see how that could be a bad thing at all.
Yeah,
Like we
man.
might have to filter out through a lot of noise, people that are proposing unworkable solutions, but just having access to their thoughts and their comments is going to help us plan better.
So David's pulled up number 44, number 45.
Yeah.
I think in 2024, earlier in the show, were talking about those numbers were like in the 60s. Now it looks like the rank. David, damn it, you moved on. What was it was like 45, I said. And listed here is the TECO Streetcar extension and then airport to downtown transit corridor. Um, the lead agency on those is the city of Tampa and Hart. Um, for the TECO Street, now this is how old is this, David? Do we have a date on this?
This
Fiscal
would have
year
been like
27.
this past June.
So this past June, meaning
Yeah.
a month ago, right?
Yeah.
So PD&E ongoing included in Regional Infrastructure Accelerator grant, TECO Streetcar extension. Can you tell us, I mean, an update on this? I know you're not at the city, but I'm sure you're tracking it. Is this thing going to happen?
Streetcar, more than other transit, fixed guideway transit projects, has a high likelihood of advancing.
Awesome.
Number one, it already exists in the ground. The challenge then is just finding money to make it happen. And I believe that the decision is going to be up to the city of Tampa to produce a local match to cash in on a federal grant.
Let's roll. And then airport to downtown transit corridor.
It's
I
a
would,
new line that's being studied. A
okay.
couple years ago, the city won a federal grant. It was like almost $2 million to create this office to develop transit projects and then bring in some outside experts to help us find better ways to finance these. So, innovative finance techniques, whether that's public private, philanthropy, you name it, low cost or low interest rate loans. We're just now getting underway. So the city received that money. They opened an office. It's being hosted by the Tampa Bay Partnership. They've already got a consultant on board. The only thing left to it is to do it.
Yeah.
So they're going to get started sketching that out probably within the next couple months.
Yeah. I actually talked with someone this morning. We had coffee and talked about something around this, and private equity could play a huge
Yeah.
role. And private equity could be really interesting because it's very dynamic. It doesn't have to follow sort of the same guidelines as like the bonds or government structures, tax dollars, but it can be held to standards by the government. So you can kind of ensure a quality standard through these projects, but just not use tax dollars to get them done. Like the private equity can make a certain return, they're happy, the public is happy because we get the projects we want. And this is kind of an evolving new form of financing
Hmm.
that I don't believe exists in our area at all, but has been done to implement projects. Like I know for a fact up in the Northeast, there's been multi-billion-dollar rail projects done with private equity and done in Europe and done in different places around the country. But kind of now that we're on the up and up and we got 23 million people and we have demands down here, private equity it might be the answer to some of these funding needs, which is really interesting to me.
I'll take the money wherever it comes from.
Yeah, the money's good here, right? So that's what Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Grant. That $2 million dollars is supposed to open an office to evaluate these alternative forms of financing.
Not just evaluate. So they're tasked with developing the projects, and then again, those outside experts are going to make recommendations to the city, to Hart about what's the best mechanism to finance.
2 million bucks is a lot of dough. So that probably pays for a few different employees to work inside this office and to pay a consultant to come in
Yeah.
and take what you guys have put forward with the county and the city and all the municipalities and say, here's our list of priorities and here's how much they'll cost. And then this office we're talking about will creatively find a way to make it happen.
The team that they selected to work on this has had success in other parts of the country. So, very excited. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think it's a step in the right direction to explore non-traditional means of financing.
I think this sounds super exciting because
Yeah.
on this show, we talk so much about all these different things we'd love to do, but it always comes down to funding. And this office being set up specifically for this sounds like a great idea. What makes you cautiously optimistic, though?
The uncertainty of the market, the timing, the scheduling. I'm just cautiously optimistic because in my position, I don't want to oversell and underdeliver. So I want to be very careful about not promising that anything will happen in a given time frame. Definitely think it's a step in the right direction. It's exciting that we won the grant. It's exciting that this mechanism has been used to deliver projects. So there's a track record. But there's a lot, as with any transportation project, there's a lot of details to work through.
So number 45, airport to downtown transit corridor, has this regional infrastructure accelerator grant to try to evaluate, how to make this happen. It's also the same story for the TECO streetcar.
Yeah.
Regional infrastructure accelerator grant, is that used for like roadways and stuff like that? Or that's sort of already has like a 50, 80 year history of how
That
to allocate funding for that?
the regional infrastructure accelerator, you probably heard the acronym RIA. If you had other guests on, that's what it
I
stands
don't
for.
think we've dug into
That's
that at
that two
all.
million. That's the $2 million I was talking about. It's called the RIA grant.
Click,
So
click that, David.
with
I think
that,
that's a
that's what was
hyperlink.
used to set up the office.
Right, but is that used for like highway projects and road projects, or is it mostly for projects that kind of need more creative financing?
I'm really not sure that grant hasn't been around for too long. I'd definitely be like speaking out of my knowledge base to give
Sure.
you a list of projects.
So, as part of the city's grant application, the following of projects were included in the scope to be assessed by the RIA Office for potential funding through United States Department of Transportation programs: streetcar extension, downtown to airport premium transit, downtown to USF bus rapid transit, Brightline station, the CSX South Tampa multimodal corridor, and then a connected citywide bike network. So I wonder if the Green Artery is a part of this program to help try to fund that. I would assume so because that's what the citywide bike network is. So it's project specific for that list to try to creatively finance these things. That's amazing, man. That's super exciting because
Yeah.
I think all these projects are like, I mean, we've talked about it all day today on the show where it's like that list of projects is so high priority when you guys put out a sort of wish list to the public. Like these are the things that are always at the top of the list. But like you mentioned today on the show, they're a little bit challenging, political reasons, financial reasons, et cetera, to get funded. This sounds like the first catalyst to actually get them done and
Yeah,
funded.
absolutely. These are the ones that have kind of captured the public's imagination. When people pull up our priority list, go through that document, they hit Control F, type in transit. Those are the ones that they're paying most attention to. And you're right, like it's absolutely exciting to see that there's funding behind this to evaluate ways to deliver so that we're not just planning something without a pathway to financing it in the end.
There's been so much of that regionally, where like the planning will come out and you'll have this new rendering in this project and then like we just never see it. I think that's happened so many times in this region.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to money, right? And sort of politics. But let me continue reading here. The next step in establishing the RIA office is to create a governance structure. The city of Tampa has identified consultants who have worked on creating successful RIA offices in other jurisdictions. And I think you mentioned that's been solved for already. They've already
Yeah, that's
established the
already done.
office.
Yep.
So do you know exactly where we're at in the RIA?
Tampa Bay Partnership is hosting the office. The consultant was selected. Um, as a matter of fact, just a couple of days ago, I got an email from the partnership leadership telling me that they were getting ready to host some like one-on-one interviews with stakeholders to talk about getting the study underway.
Wow. Very exciting. So this thing's rolling. Um, is there any public information I can dig further into? Because I definitely want to keep tracking this thing, man.
Uh,
Because I don't,
Public, I don't know. You could reach out to
it's
Bamitra
kind of
Simmons at
nerdy.
the
I guess it's
partnership.
not
She'd probably
like,
be able to tell you.
it's not as sexy as like the Rays Stadium potentially coming to Tampa, right? That's
It
not,
depends,
it
like
depends who you're talking to.
I'm pretty excited about streetcar extension.
Me too,
I'm not a
man.
huge baseball fan. Yeah, like it'd be cool to land the Rays, but downtown to airport has like a different ring to it.
Yeah, I was over at the airport in the rental car center and I took the little train from the main terminal to the rental car center and I was like, can you imagine if you could just stay on this thing and go all the way downtown? How
Oh, heck yeah.
convenient and amazing it would be, and how many people would use it that fly into our airport and go to the conventions and do things in the urban core that wouldn't have to Uber and wouldn't have to taxi and wouldn't have to rent a car.
You're right. We're so overdue. This community deserves something like that. Like, why is it the Atlantas and the Charlottes? Like Tampa is definitely on par with them. Like, we deserve nice things.
We deserve it, man. We deserve it. And I think that once it's built, there's going to be naysayers like there is with anything along the way. And there's going to be challenges and it's probably going to cost an unbelievable amount of money, and hopefully this office can get creative on how to fund it. But once it's built and people get it, that will be a turning point for this region. And I think once we get that first project online, you'll have many, many projects to follow because people will see the success. And the only thing we really have to show for it is what the streetcar that was put in the early 2000s, the Sunrunner in St. Pete. You know, you have like a couple of these small little things that have been done, but nothing as significant as a fixed transit line from the airport to downtown Tampa. Or frankly, even just like a streetcar extension would be a game changer for people to start to understand what this could all look like.
Yeah.
And from your seat to look at some of the data, the ridership, to track development patterns around these things, to see the private enterprise coming in on the outskirts of a project like that and making bets and investments in an area. I mean, if you look at where they want to do that streetcar extension, it's in a pretty sort of like rundown area of downtown that really needs like a helping hand and some revitalization. And a project like a streetcar extension could absolutely be that catalyst. I mean, you start to put streetcar stubs up that north corridor, going up to the Armature Works area and back, you're going to start to have investments and businesses really pay attention to that.
The Route 1 being fare free is a good pilot to demonstrate the value of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's not, I'm not sure that they're going to operate on the same corridor. That's kind of yet to be determined, but the ridership that Heart's Route 1 is pulling in is just amazing. Like 50% increase from last year, probably projected to be even more than that. Um, it's really amazing what they've been able to do. And kudos to the city for agreeing to fund it. Kudos to Hart for coming up with the concept.
What part of town are you coming from when you do your bus route? You said you take the bus sometimes.
Yeah, I live just a little bit north of downtown St. Pete. So I drive up to Gateway Plaza, hop on the 100X, and then it comes over Gandy, Britain Station, and then pretty much like drops me off at the front door of my office.
Wow. David and I actually talked about filming and doing a little special on Bus Route 1. And it would be interesting if we did it together. Like if we sat on the bus and did Bus Route 1 and maybe talked to a few people on the bus and did like an interview style.
Dude, I'm down.
Wouldn't that be cool? Like who's who, man? Who's using it? You know, did you ride it before it was free? Have you ridden it more since it was free? Like try to gather that boots on the ground data. And I think people are really excited about it.
Oh, that's even more relevant than what I was going to suggest. I was going to
Oh,
ask if you've seen Subway Takes.
no.
No, you haven't seen Subway Takes? It's this dude in New York that rides the subway and invites guests on to like express a position, and he tells them whether he agrees with it or not. It's just like a fun riff thing, but doing it on Heart Route 1 would be a cool Tampa specific like application.
Do it with us. That'd be
Dude,
fun.
I'm down.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. We should talk after we shut this thing down and make that happen because I think that the education aspect of all of this is really important. And our region and our cities don't have a reference point. You know, unless you travel around the country, around the world, you don't know what we're missing. And when the streetcar is made free, you see this massive increase in ridership. I mean, it breaks records every year. Every time I go by that thing, it's packed. A lot of people use it, and it has its own challenges. I mean, um, you know, it's for a different day. But Bus Route 1, another great example. You mentioned it. You make that thing free. Look at the ridership increase. Maybe it has a dedicated lane, and you shave down travel times. Now you're talking an even more, you know,
Mhm.
increase in ridership. Um, is that the next evolution, by the way, of these lanes that become free? Like as an example, Bus Route 1, right? You make that free. You sort of test out, hey, who and what kind of type of people are riding it? Where are they coming from? How many people are using it? Is the next step to increase that quality of that transit line to have like a dedicated line where only that bus can be in that lane?
That's the ultimate goal of it. I think what the ridership figures for Heart going fare free for a year tell us is that we can make a really compelling argument to the state to allow us to repurpose that lane. Like repurposing it is not going to result in underutilization. It serves a different purpose and an important one. So yeah, that's just all evidence that we're going to use to build the case to the state to allow us to, you know, build it out, have it, you know, a much faster travel time, less dwell times, get to your destination with one seat. You don't have to hop off and transfer.
Yeah, I mean that to me is the ultimate goal. If you can get some sort of a bus line that doesn't have to sit in traffic and it's potentially free, I mean, you're going to have some serious use on that thing. That corridor, that USF, Suitcase City, what else? University area. Now it's being called Uptown. Like I feel like it has 10 different names, but that is going to be a massive place where people need to move back and forth, right? From downtown up to that USF area. And then of course to West Shore too. Really the same way bus route 1 serves like the downtown to the USF area, you almost need the same thing for downtown to the West Shore area too, like connecting both of those places. And while you're at it, hit that airport.
Yeah.
It's right there, man. So David, what'd you pull up here? What is this? This is the airport to downtown transit details. What's the cost on this thing? What does it say? Now these are all estimates, right?
Yeah. What they
800 million.
project, 800 mil.
Yeah. But again, you compare it to some of the roadway budgets, and the defining aspect of getting a transit system from the airport to downtown Tampa, I mean, we talked about it, it would be so significant. And 800 million, when you compare it to some of the highway costs, doesn't seem like a whole lot of money.
What I like to see is 6-year project timeline.
Is that pretty quick?
Yeah, that's quick. And I mean, that's just thinking about what could be delivered in a short time frame. That would be transformative for the city, for the county, and like what other project could you deliver in such a short time frame that would have that magnitude of impact? Very few.
And I believe,
Positive impact. I mean, you could do a lot to mess this place up in 6 years, but something like a keystone project like that would be amazing.
and so 6 years from today, I mean, this isn't 6 years, this is like 6 years because they have included um, Tampa RIA management and coordination, right? So this, I guess technically this has already started.
Yeah.
6 years. Wow. Wow, man. This has been great today. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It goes by quick, doesn't it? I feel like we
What
could keep,
time is it?
it's almost 3 o'clock.
Time flew.
Time flew
I
by,
got to show
man.
you subway takes.
Yeah, show me Subway takes, and then let's talk offline about we'll do something with Heart. I think that could be really cool to do a version of Subway takes here locally.
Oh, I'm all about that.
Maybe Heart would even, they probably want to be involved. I don't know, who knows? We'll talk to them. But listen, Johnny Wong, I appreciate you being here. Do you share out any information? Do you have an Instagram? Are you on any of that? Do people need to contact you?
Um, if they need to contact me, they can go to planhillsborough.org and search for my name.
There
Not
you
hard to
go.
find. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you again.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, bye everybody.